sharpen up those edges and grease up your chains. We are going to live it up with mountain life. Dropping in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, mountain lifers, mountain lovers, those who run to the hills or walk slowly? How's it going? How are you doing? How are the depths of winter treating you? Are you holding up? It's a crazy world, isn't it? Or at least, it's a world in which crazy stuff happens, or crazy people. But that isn't the entire world. The real world is the trees, the mountains, the rivers, lakes, oceans, sunsets, the actual physical world. And I don't know about you, but when life gets hectic, that's often the world that makes the most sense. That tangible, real world can give the best perspective, or at least help slow things down a bit, or whatever. I guess what I'm saying is, there's never a bad time to get outside, and there's never a better time either. Welcome back to Live It Up with Mountain Life, or welcome for the first time. Thank you for donating another hour of your ear holes and your attention span. My name is Feet Banks, and today on the show we have ultramarathoner, photographer, filmmaker, artist, writer, and all-around badass Hilary Matheson, who stopped in to eat mini eggs, drink tea, and talk about running for hours and sometimes days on end, which is a world I don't really know that much about. But before we get into that conversation, though, here's a few words from Rux, our first ever partner here on Live It Up. Hey folks, we need to talk about your gear. Have you got bags and boxes and bins of really cool, highly useful outdoor gear? But do you spend way too long digging around, finding, organizing, transferring, and sometimes forgetting your key outdoor gear when you want to be actually outdoors using it? If so, the team at Rux has you covered. They decided that storing, accessing, hauling, unpacking, and repacking all our outdoor gear takes too much time, space, and effort, so they came up with a solution. Rux is an all-in-one, compactable, and adaptable carry and storage system that brings new levels of efficiency to storing, carrying, road tripping, protecting, and accessing your gear out wherever the winds of adventure carry you. Plus, the whole thing compresses down to about the size of a large pizza box, so you don't have a bunch of empty bins banging around when you get where you're going. A Rux has walls and a lid like a box, but it's compressible and has straps like a pack. It's durable and weather resistant. All my fly fishing stuff fits into a 70-liter Rux. I can throw it on my back, hike it into the river, and use the waterproof lid to stand on while I slide into my waders. You pretty much need to see Rux in action to understand its awesomeness. So go on the internet and hit up www.rux.life. That's rux.life. Even better, Rux is offering Live It Up listeners 20% off at checkout with a promo code MountainLife20. That's Mountain Life, capital letters, and the number 20. No spaces. And no kidding, these things keep the gear in and the elements out. Rux will make your life better. Well, all right, how'd you like that? That's the first time I ever had to do one of these partner shout-outs. It's harder than I thought. Rux is legit, though, and I really did take it fishing last weekend. Did I catch anything? No. Is it because I live too close to Vancouver and the rivers feel a lot of angler pressure? Or is it because I still have a lot to learn about fly fishing? I think it's definitely a lot of the latter and probably some of the former. I don't know. I sometimes catch fish, not very often, and that's okay. Because like my buddy Brian Niska up at Skeena Bay and Terrace always says, I'm a steelhead fisherman. I have to understand patience. Which is true, those things are hard to catch, and they're rare. And my cast needs a lot of work, and so does my patience. Patience is a virtue, isn't it? Maybe even more so in these days, with all the feeds overpowering our brains. Not that long ago, before the internet, back when I was a kid, you might speak to 30 people a day, or you'd read a single newspaper, talk to a dozen people at work, maybe watch the news. So over 8 to 10 hours, your brain would receive 30 to 40 different personalized information packages, opinions or statements, facts, figures, people agreeing with you, arguing with you, pointing something out. Now you can get that and more sitting on the toilet for 2 minutes. Over the course of a whole day, our brains are getting hit with dozens, hundreds, sometimes even thousands of perspectives, headlines, opinions, rants. It's hours and hours and bits and bytes of information coming in from way beyond our immediate environment. It's no wonder shit starts to feel overwhelming. This is way more outside information than brains have ever had to process in the history of brains. Are they up for the task? It often seems like maybe not, which is why it can take us a few days to really, truly decompress when we do manage to unplug and step away from the endless scroll, the 24-hour news cycle, the likes and the messages. But maybe that's a problem. Instead of stepping away, maybe we should be running away, slowing down the brain by speeding up the feet, tapping into that runner's high. Our guest this week is an award-winning photographer and a writer who's graced the pages of Mountain Life a couple of times. She's also a graphic designer, a videographer, and an athlete, most notably a long-distance athlete. Hilary Matheson says that whenever she's out in nature shooting photos, being a runner and an athlete helps her better anticipate where the raw and authentic moments are going to turn up. So before I roll tape on this chat, we should note there are a couple instances of spicy language. And if you're not into that kind of thing, you could be up for a couple of surprises. But for 99% of us, it's nothing to be worried about. Just a world-class ultramarathoner going the extra mile to get her point across. Let's jump into it. So 120 miles. You just run for like 2 days? Do you sleep? How does it work?
Highly don't recommend, first of all. No, I mean, Fat Dog 120 miler, that's the longest race that I've done as an ultra runner. Although they do get crazier than that. Like I shoot races that are 200 miles, 250 miles long. So I will say that isn't even as insane as it gets.
But do people like they do it all in one go, or do they take rests, or sleep?
Kind of. I mean, the way it works is you just have a start clock and a stop clock, so you can decide when you want to stop in that time.
For sure.
And obviously, the less time you stop, the better you're going to do. So I think when I did Fat Dog, I didn't sleep. I sat down once. My parents met me at an aid station at 6 a.m. on the second day and made me scrambled eggs and bacon, which was magical.
Sick.
And I brushed my teeth and I put on a fresh shirt, and then I tried to convince myself that I was just starting again, and just kept going. So yeah, my race for Fat Dog was like 34 hours, just under 34 hours, and I didn't sleep at all.
Crazy. And is there drug testing? Like, could people just do a bunch of acid and power through, or?
I mean, I don't know if you'd want to. Like, as it is, totally sober, you have hallucinations just by virtue of how tired you are.
For sure.
Like, there's actually an award at the end of Fat Dog for the best hallucination story, so it's fairly common.
Awesome. And what kind of terrain is that for Fat Dog? Where does that take place?
So that one, it's one of the hardest ultramarathons in the world. It kind of shows up on these lists, and it has almost as much elevation gain as climbing Mount Everest. I think it's like just under 30,000 feet of climbing. And it starts in Karamios and then it ends in Manning Park. So It's absolutely beautiful. You're up in like the Cathedral Park area, super remote. The year I did it, there was a grizzly bear that was on course, and I was like trekking along in the middle of the night and happened to stumble upon this like half-eaten deer lying on the trail. And I was like, oh my God.
That's awesome.
So there's all these factors that go into it. There's no cell phone coverage out there. So your crew has no idea where you are until you show up at the aid station. Like it's a trip.
Cathedral Park, a beautiful part of British Columbia. So do you ever feel like as you're running through these places, are you still able to take it all in and appreciate the landscape? Or does it ever feel like you're just like, shit, head down, I can't really enjoy this because I've got 30 more hours to run?
Yes and yes. There are definitely times when I feel super present. And I mean, part of the magic of these races is you have nowhere else to be. Like you're there until you're done. Right. So I do feel like I kind of relax into it. Like, you know, when you're out for a run and you know, okay, I have an hour and then I have to do this and this and this. I feel like it feels longer because you're aware of how, you know, short the time is in your day. But when you're running one of these races, you're just out there. So you definitely feel like you're looking around, you're taking it in. You know, it's areas of the world that I might never explore, and certainly not like that much of it at one time. So you're definitely present. And then, you know, obviously as the race goes on, you have these incredible lows where you question your life, you question all your choices and decisions leading up to that moment. You just go through these like bottoms. And that's kind of the cool thing about these races is that you hit that point and you just have these like weird conversations with yourself. And then you have to try to like dig out of that hole because you're still running and you can feel sorry for yourself all you want, but you're still going and nobody's going to rescue you. So it's this cool like roller coaster of emotion. Like you're just kind of feeling it all. Like you're almost like an observer, I think, just kind of like experiencing all these emotions and like recognizing them. Like, okay, now I feel really shitty and I really just want to stop. And then other times you're on top of the world and you're like running through meadows and you're floating. And that could be after you've been running for 24 hours. Like it's not linear. So it's a fascinating journey.
I mean, to us mediocre or beginner or non-runners, you always hear, even since the 70s, this thing called runner's high. Does that happen on these big long things, or what even is that? You'd hear about people like jogging 5 miles and feeling the runner's high. Obviously, this is such a different venue. Does the same similar thing happen, or?
For me, yes. I mean, I've never experienced a runner's high on anything shorter than like 100 miles. So super jealous of anyone that says that they do, because that's way more efficient. But I have had it a couple times, and it's pretty crazy. It's like you just go from this moment of feeling like maybe you're totally at the end of your rope or whatever it is, but you get to this like adrenaline rush, and all of a sudden, like I remember in Fat Dog, I was just running down the trail, and I was running my fastest times of the whole race, like my fastest splits, and I could hear this voice like yelling and screaming, and it took me a second to realize it was me. Like that's how out of body I was. I was just kind of in this zone where I was like this like whirling banshee, like screaming my way to the finish line, just like totally in my own little world. But like I threw down the fastest splits of the race, like out of anyone in the whole course for the last 10 kilometers, and I really couldn't feel anything right up until the moment when I crossed the finish line, and then I collapsed and vomited everywhere. So, there was definitely an end to that runner's high.
Crazy.
It was right in front of my parents. They were like, "What is this sport? And why are you doing this?" But yeah, it's a really, really crazy feeling. And I think that you do have to push yourself to these insane places physically, mentally, like obviously sleep deprivation plays into it, but yeah.
Body chemistry. I know you have a tattoo of some kind of cellular structure on your body that's to do with running in some way.
I'm such a nerd. My tattoo is actually the runner's high. So I have that on my leg.
It's a recipe.
It's a recipe. It's a formula that I keep trying to replicate, and hopefully I'll be able to tap into it sooner rather than later. But yeah, I thought it was a cool way to remind myself, like, this is why I'm out here. Yeah. One of the reasons, but it's just a really unique thing that you can kind of channel through running and through pushing yourself to such extreme lengths.
You mentioned your parents was running something that you did as a young person. Are they used to this, or have they had to get used to it?
Yeah, absolutely not. I hated running.
Right.
I grew up, I was mostly homeschooled, and then when I went into the public school system, I had no like team sport skills or anything.
Right.
And
how old were you when that happened?
Like 14. I went to school for the last couple years, so I was kind of too late to make all the competitive teams, and I would get notes I would forge notes actually, so that I could get out of running in PE, and that was like 2 kilometers or however long those runs were. But I really just didn't see the point to it. Like I was really active. We lived on a farm, so I was super outdoorsy, but I was not into organized sports at all.
Yeah. Where's this in the prairies or BC?
No, this is out in the valley.
Right,
back before the valley was all condos and subdivisions.
And what did your folks do when you were growing up?
They were beekeepers.
Oh,
so yeah, we were homeschooled, lived on this farm with their best friends and their 5 kids. So there's like 9 kids running around, and we made up crazy games. We filmed elaborate productions of Braveheart and Gladiator and all these like really appropriate movies for 8 and 9-year-olds. But yeah.
So you obviously had a lot of honey then?
Had a lot of honey. I bottled a lot of honey. That was my summer, was like free child labor for my parents, bottling honey.
What about now? Do you still like honey, or are you fed up with it?
I love it. And we have this thing. My dad is obsessed with collecting honey from all over the world because it tastes so different depending on like where the pollen is from.
Sure.
So everywhere I travel, because I travel quite a bit, I bring back honey. So that's kind of our little thing.
Awesome. I must have read it because I haven't heard anything in 2 years, but I read somewhere that if you eat the honey from the area that you live in, it helps, with your allergies and stuff, because you're ingesting, micro amounts of whatever pollens are going to be in the air.
I mean, I'm no doctor, but I've heard that too, and it makes good sense to me, and it also just tastes good. So, do
you throw down with the honey then on your runs, or do you keep it more on the scientific gel pack kind of nutrition? Or I
mean, I do. I've never actually tried honey. I've tried maple syrup with a little salt in that.
Right.
That's actually pretty tasty, but I hate like chemically like gels and stuff like that. Yeah. Not my jam. In recent years, I've started experimenting with more and more real food. And these are long races, mind you. Like if I'm running a short race, quote short, like a 50K, I'm not eating full meals. Like you're just having like Coca-Cola, watermelon, chips, whatever is just like easy, salty, sugary. But for a long race, you have to eat meals. Like you're out there for so long. Right. So I've gotten to the point where I can tuck back a pizza while I'm running, like flatbread, not the big thick crust, but like roll it up and just like shove it in. Banana bread, avocado sushi is a really good one. Nice. Really recommend that. So just trying to think of things that are really easy to digest, but like actually excite me a little bit more.
Do the French runners just have a big baguette? That they carry
and some wine probably, and some cheese. That's their secret.
I think I've spoken about it before on the pod, but I always come back to Margus Riga, who's a photographer that works with the magazine a lot. Every summer solstice, he does a huge epic mountain bike ride on the North Shore, like, an 18, 20-hour ride. And I believe the only thing he brings is like a boiled egg and a lemon. And
what's wrong with him?
That's all he needs.
Life is about food. Come on, man.
So as a child writing notes to get away from running, how did you end up in this life? Was it what dragged you into, and then what was the progression? Was it a half marathon, or was it all of a sudden you're running for days and days?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really a standard trajectory, I gotta say. I ran a little bit in my early 20s. I had some health problems, so I had about 6 months where I spent a lot of time in the hospital, ended up being diagnosed with celiac disease before it was even cool, so that was a fun little part of my life. And then after that, I think I was just looking for a way to like get community again, to feel active. Like, I'd lost a bunch of weight through that. I just I don't know. It was like totally foreign to me to kind of be in that place. And so I started hiking, and I lived on the North Shore near Grouse Mountain. So I would just hike up the Grouse Grind, do that like 4 or 5 days a week. And I saw this advertisement for a trail race, and it was like the Peak to Peak, or I don't know. It's the one that starts at Ambleside and goes all the way up to the Seek the Peak. There we go.
Right.
And goes from Ambleside up to the top of Grouse Mountain. And I was like, well, I can do that. That's pretty much what I'm doing already, just uphill the whole way. So I signed up for that, ran that, really enjoyed it, kind of got connected with some trail runners through that. I basically just made friends with all the people around me.
What year would have this been?
Like 2012, I think,
Right.
something around there. And then through that, I started to hear about these longer races, these like 50K races, like the Neenacker, which is the run that goes from Horseshoe Bay to Deep Cove on the Baden Powell. And I was like, oh my God, like people run these insane, stupid things. And so I signed up for one. It was Squamish 50 in 2013. And I signed up like 3 weeks before. And I'm pretty sure it was because someone told me that I could never run something like that. It was something like that. It was a stupid comment.
Right.
And I was like, I'll show you. I'll go run this
you
thing.
You can't do it because you're a girl.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, or you can't do it because you don't look like you can do it.
Right. And so when you say Squamish 50, is it 50 miles or 50 kilometers?
So this was a 50K.
Right.
But I'd probably only run like 25K before that. So it was a huge jump up. I knew nothing. I decided the night before the race to go buy Dr. Scholl's leather insoles for my runners because I had some plantar fasciitis. And I thought, oh, I can use these for my dress shoes at work as well. So I'll get the leather ones. Like, I was just so like clueless as far as running stuff goes.
Yeah.
Didn't eat the whole race, got horrific blisters. Like half my foot was a blister. Kind of crawled my way across the finish line. And I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah. And I think there was like the sadistic part of my brain that was like, well, that hurt. I wonder if I could do it any better.
Yeah.
And so I got kind of obsessed, and I ran like 12 50Ks in the next year, basically one a month. Yeah. And I didn't do them particularly well. It was just like every one, I felt like I learned something. I was like, okay, well, now I've dialed in that, or now I've dialed in that. And then I eventually hired Gary Robbins, who's kind of a local legend here in the ultra running world. And he was my first coach. And that's when I started to take it more seriously.
Right.
It's a really good thing I started working with him because I think I dialed back the pace, which was not sustainable.
Right. And then you started running competitively and getting podiums and
Yeah, basically. Yeah. My first podium was Fat Dog 70 miler, which I did the year before I did the 120 miler, and I won the race, and as a prize for winning the race I got an entry to the 120 miler,
Right.
which I had no intention of running, but I was like, shit, free race entry,
Yeah,
I better not waste that. So it just kind of forced me up through these distances. And like, I don't know, I'm not the fastest short distance runner, but I'm really, really stubborn. And so I think you learn that about yourself. And I like that feeling of digging in. And then, when you're passing some 6'4" hockey player guy on the last climb of a race and he's crying on the side of the trail, like just a mess, and you're feeling pretty good. Like, it's an interesting sport. And I think that because men and women are so even in it over long distances, it just kind of is this like level playing field where you can really push yourself. And I love that.
And I guess, you went into it sort of looking for community, and then, of course, found one. It feels like the running community has really blossomed over the past 10 years.
Yeah, honestly, it's crazy. Even since I started running, there's been a huge jump. I think a lot more awareness, a lot more people just like looking for reasons to push themselves, or looking for that feeling of just feeling really alive, even if it hurts, And I think that the rest of our lives is so cushy that honestly, I think we kind of crave that feeling of like inducing pain just so we feel something.
Yeah, for sure. So this is one part of your life. And then, on the other side, you're a graphic designer, a photographer, a writer, a filmmaker. How were you already getting into that stuff before you found running, or how did you get into that side of things?
Well, I guess it all came from the ultra running because I started down that path first, and then I worked at a marketing job for the government, and it was just kind of a 9 to 5. And as running picked up, I started getting more involved in the community. I was working on a fundraiser for the North Shore Trail Association, and I realized I couldn't find any female photographers to submit photos for this like calendar fundraiser we were doing. And I just kind of thought, that seems really strange. And it inspired me to want to get into shooting photos and just like be on that side of it. Because I thought, well, I can run. Why can't I carry a camera while I run? So taught myself how to use a DSLR, started taking it with me on all my runs and subjecting all my friends to being my guinea pigs, and just like had so much enthusiasm and a lot more of that than common sense. But it was just kind of crazy. And then as I went down that path, I got brands reaching out to me, and they're like, we're looking for female photographers that can keep up. And like Under Armour was my first big client. They wanted me to come do this project in Death Valley that was supposed to be like the hardest running event ever. And they wanted a female photographer. I showed up and I ran with my camera and all my gear, like with all these athletes from all over the world. And it was just kind of this really cool moment where I was like, wow, like this is combining all the things I love. And, I was passionate about photography because it let me kind of capture what I love about it and share it with other people. So it just kind of was this natural progression of like, how do I get other people as excited about this as I am?
Yeah. And then I know we did a story with you a few years back now, but you ended up going to Nepal to just run around with a group of people. How did that come about? What was the deal with that?
Yeah. So, I ended up quitting my corporate job. I went back to school, went to Emily Carr for graphic design because I did want to be able to combine all of this in its own little like package, and then got a call from a friend of mine who I'd met in Kenya on another trip. And, life is crazy. Like you just get these opportunities. And I feel like if you're open to just going for it, like so many things come out of those little micro decisions. And so this guy that I met in Kenya on another little trip that had come out of photography called me up, and he's like, putting together a team of climbers and, whatever, we're going to go climb some stuff in Nepal. And the idea was that we were going to climb all these peaks that were like 6,000 meters, which is like, no one ever climbs those because people go to that region and they climb the big stuff or they trek.
You don't need a permit for those
You don't need a permit for all of those. So exactly. So we just had fun. We went out there for like 6 weeks and we just tagged all these peaks. Like we would kind of base ourselves in the villages and just run up and down. And it was a great trip. And, we did some magazine articles. I did the piece for Mountain Life out of that trip. And it just kind of got me thinking, like, I can kind of create my own stories that I want to tell. And then I can get brands or magazines on board to help, enable that.
Yeah.
So it kind of started me down a whole other path of trying to like evolve my work so that I could tell the stories that I wanted to tell.
And then I remember there was like a collective or something called the Content Creators. Did that come out of that trip, or was that already something that you were in, or did you start that?
Oh man, I feel like there's been a few iterations of that. I think the way that the community's set up is that there's like all of us are kind of floating around with all these skills, and there's so many opportunities to work together. So I think that was part of this little group. I think we keep talking about doing more trips, but everyone's lives are in 5 different directions. So I think it comes down to just finding the right idea, and then you pull together the people that, are super jazzed about it or that want to get out there or have the time. And like I've worked with so many cool people. I met people from all over the world, and then those lead to other opportunities because then they call you up and they have another big idea. So I feel like it's this like larger community really of people that are just constantly trying to kind of create something bigger than they can do on their own.
Yeah, and that's been pretty big the last few years. It seems like every brand, it wants to make their own content. Everyone's throwing around words like authenticity, authentic content. What do you think? Even on your bio, it talks about creating authentic content for your partners. What makes content authentic nowadays compared to the stuff we grew up with?
I think there's a lot more, obviously, the conversation about diversity in the outdoors, about like how we kind of portray who's out there doing these adventures, how we're more inclusive. Like, I think that conversations really come to the forefront. As a female photographer, it's an interesting thing because I definitely feel like it's still a very male-dominated world. Like, I've never worked with another female photographer on a project before.
Right.
It's always all male teams, and a lot of it's because it's super physical, which is interesting. And, you know, like if you look at ultra runners as a percentage, it's like 70% men, 30% women. And then you distill that to photographers, it's like an even like smaller niche of people. So it makes sense to me. But then I'm also like, well, why isn't there? So it's been something that I'm really passionate about, is trying to broaden that diversity, not just in front of the lens, but like the people that are telling the stories have different perspectives. And I always feel like when I'm on a shoot with other guys, like what I'm looking for as far as content goes is different than what guys are looking for. Just different moments and different things that you see. And one of the things I love about shooting, like I shoot a lot of these races now too. So the 200-mile races, and you see people during their whole experience. And because I'm an athlete, I can put myself in like where they are. And so I'm often kind of anticipating those moments of when they're going to break. Essentially, you're looking for that like really raw moment. And I do think it's really important that like who's telling the story should also be diverse, and we should have all these perspectives. So yeah, I think that's something that I'm definitely trying to recognize more, be part of creating more.
You shot the last Squamish 50 in, I think the weather could be described as inclement.
Oh my God. An atmospheric river rained down from the sky the whole weekend.
Was the atmospheric river substantially worse than any other, heavy rain that we get around here in your experience? I mean, you spent a lot of time outside.
Yeah, no, that was totally wild. And I mean, normally the Squamish 50 is held in August, and because of COVID and permits, they'd actually had to move it to October last year.
Right.
So that was another challenge in and of itself. And for me, I wasn't just shooting it, I was also working on a live stream, which was the first time that we'd pulled something like that off. So we did a full YouTube live stream with commentators. We had like guests coming in and out, and then I was feeding images from the race course directly on the live screen. And like every electronic device that I owned was giving me like waterlogged warnings, and I was like shoving everything in rice and dry bags, and it was almost comical, except I was like, please, nothing short circuit on me. But it's the thing about these races. Like, I mean, last year I was the media director for some 200-mile races, and in one race we had snow, heat, rain, hail, and extreme wind that blew over the finish line and toppled all our photography equipment in like a 4-day span. And so it's just a huge part of these things is that you don't know what weather you're going to get, and you just have to deal with it, whatever it is. Like, I've had absolutely wild weather conditions, and like Mother Nature doesn't care that you have an event to shoot or be part of or whatever. So
totally,
you get what you get.
Totally. Yeah, it was an interesting year for weather. We had the atmospheric river, the heat dome. We had a pretty decent ice storm here the other day.
Yep. Hacked an inch of ice off of my car. That was fun.
Yeah, it took a piece of my roof rack with it I think
Rip.
when you don't hack it away, you just drive till it flies off on a corner.
I would hate to be behind you.
Well, yeah. I
God.
To hope it was a corner where there was no one behind you.
Yeah.
Back to the idea of representation and diversity and authenticity in what we're putting out there. I know you've made a lot of posts about mental health, about body image, and it feels like those were well responded. What are some of the stories or some of the responses you get from opening yourself up like that online?
I think in general, like, we're all just craving real. Obviously, it's very easy to have a very curated life, and there's been a lot of conversations around that. And I think it's hard because our natural instinct is to put out our best selves and to show that side of ourselves. And
do you think it's a natural instinct, or has it been drilled into us for generations?
I would argue it's a natural instinct. Like, if you think, like, historically, 50 years ago, like, they're not putting out photos of themselves in their bathrobes. Like, I think it's just like humanity. Like, we want to be seen in our best selves, and we don't even want to see ourselves in our worst selves. And so you have a platform where you get to decide how you're seen. Like, of course, we're going to want to put that selves out, and we want to think that we're like that all the time, but none of us are, right? And so I think for me, it's always felt really important to be real. And I think, I don't know, I find it exhausting otherwise. Like, I'm posting these beautiful photos, but unless I can connect to them and unless I can be be myself or like have something that resonates with people, then it's just a pretty photo. Like, it doesn't really matter. There's a million pretty photos out there, and we're all super desensitized to them, I think. You know, you could sit there and scroll and scroll and scroll and not really be engaged with anything. So for me, the thing that grabs people or starts a conversation is that moment of like, hey, like, this is important. This is something we're all dealing with and nobody's talking about it. So let's talk about it. And yeah, I think that's been a huge part of like my personal story. And definitely, you know, as a photographer, you're always trying to find the balance of like how much of it is about me and how much of it is about my body of work.
Yeah.
But I do think, especially like a platform like Instagram, just really cutting through the bullshit and finding ways to have these conversations is more important than just being like, here's a pretty photo. Like,
yeah. And then you'll get to go, you know, conversate back and forth with your followers. Is it generally mostly positive percentage wise, or do you end up with a negative feedback from the field there as well?
No, I think unless you're political, people are generally, you know, and like everything political right now is a hot topic, as we all know.
For sure.
But in general, I think people do crave that. And often, like I've found it's almost overwhelming with some of the mental health posts. Like I've talked a lot about depression that I've struggled with. And actually, you know, it was interesting going back to Fat Dog. After some of those races were over, I definitely hit a low patch because you go through this big high where you've accomplished these things, you've had these amazing race results. And then you're like, what now? And that was a really interesting thing for me. I wasn't expecting that. You just kind of go into this low where you don't have any races coming up. You obviously can't sustain that level of activity all the time, and you can't always be topping it. Yeah. And so I actually stepped back from racing for a few years because I needed to answer that question of like, who am I? Like, am I someone that needs these results, or I need this gratification that comes from people being like, wow, good job, amazing? Or, you know, like, what are my reasons for doing this? Because if I can't answer that, then I'm not going to last. And there's always going to be someone younger and faster and fitter and whatever. Like, that's just our attention span.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, I really battled with my place in this like running world. And I think that's why I've leaned more into the storytelling side of it, is because I want to be able to like, you know, elevate other people's stories, not just my own. And I think that's a much like healthier thing for me.
And on the artistic side, you don't get that feeling where, you know, you crush it with something that you've put a lot of energy into, and then there's still lots more ideas coming down the pipe. You don't have that sort of what now feeling like what, say, you know, Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin would do after they got off the stage of 170,000 screaming fans.
Totally. Yeah. There's that like insane adrenaline rush. And I think social media and all that plays into that feeling of like, oh, more likes, more engagement, more this and that. And so, I think that, you know, you always have to have that conversation with yourselves, because I think we're all super addicted to it. You know, it's made us very narcissistic. But yeah, I think for me, it's a better balance. And it's been interesting because I'm actually getting back to racing this year. And I ran my first race in 4 years in December in Thailand. And so I do feel like I've had a lot of time to kind of come to terms. Obviously, COVID kind of extended my like racing hiatus, but, you know, had some time to reprioritize like where I sit. I know that I'm not going to be the top runner in the world, you know, like I'm okay with that. And so I feel like I can get back to it now and do my best and hopefully have some good days out there, but like it's not defining me, you know?
Do you get a lot of, we had Sarah Bulford on here, a motocross, I think you guys know each other, a motocross athlete or enduro athlete, and she said she gets a lot of free advice from dudes on the internet, like people telling her what she should do, how she should dress. You know, sending dick pics. Does that bleed over into the running community as well, or?
You know, I definitely think I do get some of that. I get it in person, actually. Like when I'm out at these big races shooting them as a woman, I'm often like out in the middle of nowhere for a couple days, like bivvying on the side of a ledge. Like I don't even bring a tent. I'm just kind of out there, and I'm super comfortable in the mountains. I'm pretty well-rounded athlete, so I have no problem with that. But I get a lot of guys that'll make comments, or they'll assume that there's got to be a guy with me if I'm going to be out there by myself, or they'll ask if I'm someone's assistant. It's just interesting. And it's like, it's not just the guys saying that too. Sometimes it's the girls. Like, it's just this perception we have of our role in the outdoor world or what we're comfortable with. And so it's like shaking that up a little bit, which is super important, but also just kind of funny how those stereotypes exist. And you're like, people don't even realize that they're doing that to you. It'll
be interesting, you know, the way things are sort of pushing in that direction of, you know, shining a light into those corners of people's blind spots and inhued stereotypical views. It'll be interesting to see in 10 years if if that happens as much. I feel like it won't, right? Because it seems like there's a conscious effort by most brands and a lot of media and tons of people to be like, hey, listen, this is like, that old way isn't the way anymore.
Totally. And I think, if I think of my childhood, obviously I never really had ultra running on the radar, but having role models, and that's a huge thing, I think, is like mentoring the next generation. And it's something that I'm trying to do with photography. Like I've gone out of my way to look for other female photographers and mentored other female photographers into this world and taught workshops. And, I think that you have to kind of lead by example with a lot of the stuff. And so if you're not willing to put the work in to help enable someone else to do it, then how are we supposed to kind of grow that community? Yeah. So it's definitely getting there. It's like anything else. You kind of say that you recognize the problem and then it takes a while to actually do something about it. But
For sure. Speaking of problems for people that travel to race and travel as a job, we're coming out of this pandemic in intermittent lockdowns on every aspect of life. What did you do, through the pandemic to sort of keep yourself engaged, stave off the doldrums and stay creative and stay active?
Well, I moved to the Sunshine Coast. That was my little COVID move. COVID hit at a really bad time. Not that it was good for anyone, but I had a super exciting year planned for trips and ventures. And I was planning this all girls trip to Mongolia to do some cool stuff. And it just obviously all got ripped out. And so, yeah, I struggled a lot. I moved to Gibson's and just decided to kind of be away from the city and be away from that feeling because it was super oppressive. Vancouver was a really depressing place, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, especially when they closed the trails and stuff. I was like, okay, this is not going to work for me.
Yeah.
So, in many ways, it ended up being a good season for me. I think I was so busy by that point in 2020 that I wasn't really stopping to take stock of where I was. I was just kind of going, and you say yes to the next exciting thing, and then you do the next one. And I was almost feeding off of the high that comes from just always having these things on the go. And so when you're forced to just sit there and be okay, what does interest me and what am I passionate about? I went back to my roots. I just started running again, for me, no races on the agenda, no big objectives, just exploring the Sunshine Coast and getting outside and taking my camera with me just for the joy of taking my camera with me. And I think in many ways it helped me get back to why I started doing all this stuff in the first place. Just for me, it was in many ways a good reset.
Somehow you snuck a trip to Thailand in there?
I did. Yeah. No, I got invited to be part of this race in Thailand, and they just opened the country up, and I think it's shut again. So I got the 1 month window where Thailand was open, and it was just crazy. Honestly, it puts a lot of the stuff that we've dealt with here in perspective, because you go to Bangkok and they require you to wear a mask outside as well as inside. There's temperature checks everywhere. I had to run with a mask on when I was in basically everything outside of the actual race I did. I had to run with a mask on, which I've never done before. And you just suffocate in your own sweat. So it made me be okay, well, you can shut up and not complain about wearing your mask in the grocery store because this is a lot worse. But it's hard to travel right now. Obviously the testing and all that is one part of it. And, I think I had 11 PCR tests in 10 days or something like that. You're just constantly getting jabbed up the nose. Yeah. But other than that, it's just hard to see somewhere like Thailand, which I've been to before. And it's such a vibrant country and it relies on, tourism as a huge part of their economy. And then to see the difference now, the night markets, which they're famous for, are just totally gone. And a lot of poverty, a lot of homelessness because of the lack of tourism. And so I think that really did put in perspective a lot of what we're dealing with. And, we've got a lot more resources and support than other places in the world do. And so it was, it was a challenging trip in many ways. But then it also, people are so friendly when you travel. People are so good. And there were so many people that went out of their way to enter into this race that was happening and be excited about it. And we were way up in northern Thailand, off grid. Nobody goes up there. And so that was just cool to see all these villages and kind of see a part of Thailand and it felt like I think traveling was like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, like honestly, there's nobody there and you're just kind of like the one token tourist and they're like, what are you doing here? And then when I was running this race, you're like running through villages and you're running through like coffee plantations. And there was a few times I thought that they were like fucking with me because the course would take me like right through the middle of a rice field. And you're like, really? That's where I'm supposed to be going right now? But just like a cool experience. And yeah, it's definitely been a challenging time to try to, get back to normal and do these things. But I'm really glad I went. It was,
I actually wanted to ask about that earlier. When you're running these long races, is there a navigation component to it? Is there technology for that? Or are you reading maps? Is it some are this way, some are that way? Is it sometimes there's just signs? Like how, I guess, what's the spectrum? I feel like there's some races where you have to have a compass.
Yeah, I think when I started in this whole thing, we weren't nearly at the like tech levels that we're at now. So It was literally just like, here's some flagging tape and we'll put an arrow to tell you which direction to go at the intersections. And I think now they still do that. Like you're mostly relying on the physical markings, but you probably also have a GPX track and you can kind of reference that. And there's definitely a few times in the race where I was like, I'm just going to double check. And then for the longer races, like the 200 milers and stuff, you often have to wear a GPS tracker. And then they've got like a ham radio team that tracks you. So yeah, and that makes sense because there's a lot less cell phone coverage and stuff. But
and do people ever like, jump on a camel and cheat or have a Jeep come pick them up? Or is it pretty honest? And
it's pretty honest. So you go through the aid stations and they're like the checkpoints. And so they do like reference your bib number and they have that record. So it would be hard to cheat for very long in a race course, And I also feel like trail running is a sport that it's pretty much honor system because there's not a lot of prize money in it. So like, what are you cheating for? I don't know. Good for you. You did better because you jumped in a Jeep. But like, I don't know. It still feels like the dirtbag sport in a lot of ways of the endurance world. Like it's not Ironman. It's not super polished. Like it still feels very grassroots. So yeah.
It feels like it's one of those things, I always talk about stuff like basketball or skateboarding where the equipment need is very low, right? So almost anybody can run.
Totally.
Providing they can, they have that mobility, but you don't really, I guess there's better shoes than other shoes, but still you'll see people running, Kenyans.
Oh yeah. There's like always some crazy person that decides they're going to run the whole thing in their TiVo sandals, with socks probably, really good look. But yeah, no, it's definitely like low gear sport, low threshold for entry. And I love that about it, but like anything else, you can make it super techy. Like you can have all the latest watches and all the latest bags and everything, but compared to running a triathlon or whatever, skimo, like it's definitely more accessible that way.
Yeah. What about, I know we talked about the COVID, but did you, when the weather's bad, you're on the Sunshine Coast, did you get a chance to play around with the camera? I thought I saw some studio stuff, some indoor stuff. How's the creative journey going for you?
It's so random.
Yeah.
At the beginning of COVID, I did this little series called Apartment Art. And I basically would just take a selfie of me in whatever space indoors I was in. And then my challenge would be trying to create a whole scene out of it, just using like stock photos in Photoshop. And I would go wild. Like I had this one where I wanted to be like underwater swimming. And so I set up my camera on a tripod so that I would like jump onto my bed in a belly flop and try to catch that exact moment when I was in the air. And then I flipped the photo so that I was like floating underwater and created this whole scene.
How many takes did that take?
Oh, many. Flop? You know what? I gave myself whiplash, which was like hilarious. You're getting old when.
Well, you're suffering for your art.
I know. I really was. Thank you, Feet.
I've been, obviously with the magazine, we see tens of thousands of photos a year submitted. And, some of my crustier old photographer friends will sometimes be over when I'm going through and be like, oh, that's over processed or whatever. I did just see a buddy when I was at this heli ski lodge at Silvertip. He one-click background changes on all of my photos. Like he chucked a rainbow in there, outer space, no tracing the horizon or anything. It's literally snow to sky. And the technology was, pretty ridiculous. And I'm just wondering how many shots that we get submitted have gone through things that I don't even know about. What are your thoughts on, the way we can fake photos? Obviously, some things you can tell, but certainly I think there's stuff out there that I certainly can't tell what's been done to a photo.
Yeah, it's a super good question. I think there's a whole space for these digital compositions. Like, I do think it's an art form, and I just think it has to be very distinct from photography. Like, I'm always, if I ever do like one of my apartment art things, I'm very clear, like, this is the before photo of me looking ridiculous jumping on my bed, and then this is the finished photo, so that you don't confuse the two. And I think that they're just... most people, I think, are pretty transparent. Like, if they've made it into a digital composition, they'll say, like, this is a 3-photo thing, or like, especially like night photography, like, you often get like a foreground exposure with the background exposure. Like, there's very little chance that star photo you see has a perfectly exposed foreground and background.
I mean, the thing is, it's possible with flash work and film.
It is possible.
Right? It's just a thing. And so some purists would be like, well, then do it that way. Sure. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation, because especially when you start talking about stuff for brands. Yeah. Like for the magazine, we're supposed to be, not swaying one way or the other. We're trying to portray what's really happening, objectivism. But for a brand, and I mean, even for us, like, we've taken a logo off of a helmet before because, that athlete's like, well, I'm not with that. It's a beautiful shot, but I'm not with that sponsor anymore. I can't be on the cover.
Yeah, and I think there's some artistic license in there. I think, I've entered some like different photography competitions will say like it can't be altered beyond like kind of quick retouching of like say a stick in the foreground of your snow that's particularly ugly and ruining your shot. But like anything that dramatically alters it is a no-go. Often they'll require the raw photo. So like that's a good way to kind of check. Yeah. My personal belief is like it should be represented how you saw it. Like I never want to see a moon that's 3 times the size of what it actually was. Sure. And there's definitely the temptation to make that like
and
that.
I mean, you can do that with lenses too, right?
Like you can, like for sure.
That's the thing. If you want to be purist, you can still get a lot of these effects.
You can get incredible photos. Like one of my favorite photos was a photo I took that it actually won an award at the VIMF International Mountain Film Festival. That's such a mouthful. But anyways, it was a shot I took it was a selfie, like on a tripod, timed, me with a headlamp looking up at the stars, all one photo, one take, shot in camera. Yeah. And I'm super proud of that photo. And I don't think I would be if I just stitched together a whole bunch of shots and stuck myself in it, which I'm very capable of doing in Photoshop. But, I think there's just like an artistic standard. And I think nowadays it is fair for magazines or whatever to lay out expectations. Yeah. I think there's a good conversation around that.
I feel like it's, right now it's still kind of old school. Yeah. But, for kids coming up with all these extra tools, like it's,
And like you said, it's so much easier now.
It's like saying, you've got to drive a standard car in 2022 because that's the way it used to be. Like, when you have the tools, you use them. And if you grow up using them, the people that don't use them start to seem outdated, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with photography.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the same conversation we're having around TikTok or around anything that's kind of new is like there's always going to be the crowd that's like, well, I don't want to do it that way because I've always done it this way. And then it's just going to change because it's inevitable. And like,
are you up to date on all that stuff? You got your TikTok?
I hate TikTok.
What about Facebook? I read this is the first year Facebook lost followers.
I don't love Facebook. I use it for Facebook Marketplace and that's about it. Yeah. And I kind of am okay with the fact that once Instagram goes the way of the dodo bird, like so do I. I don't rely on it for business anymore. And like, I think that's a big part of just removing yourself so that your work doesn't depend on, the influencer thing or whatever. But at the same time, like, I don't want to be one of those people that's just like, meh, TikTok's the worst because a lot of people love it and get a lot out of it. And I think technology that's the nature of it. And like,
I'm looking forward to the next pandemic. I'm just going to go on, I'm going to go on TikTok and I'm going to learn how to dance. You could learn how to dance so easy on TikTok, all the moves.
Don't do it, Feet. Don't do it. Might go viral for all the wrong reasons.
Bit more lighthearted. What do you feel about, jogging pants versus jeans?
Ooh, well, I'm a big fan of the doer jeans, not sponsored, but the really stretchy ones you can climb in. So those are kind of my jogging pant cheat sheet. Right. But yeah, I generally...
They're firm. They're like the fabric could stop like... a light blade.
Yeah, I wouldn't try to take a knife to my leg, but you can go for it and tell me if it works.
Because we always called them, soft pants or hard pants, right? But the lines are blurring there.
The lines are blurring, man. Technology.
I know. What about what would your kit be when you're on one of these long runs? Obviously, it's day, night. You need to layer. What What kind of, is it natural fabrics, synthetics? What's your go-tos?
Yeah, no cotton, no polyester. I'm a big fan of merino wool, so that's usually my go-to for a like light layer. I usually run in, like even in a summer run, I'll wear one of those SPF long sleeve shirts because I couldn't be bothered putting on sunscreen all the time.
Sure.
And then, a lot of these races have mandatory gear, so you have to have like a waterproof jacket, you have to have waterproof pants, and then you're wearing like a running vest, so you've got your water with you, like gloves, a buff. I like to run in shorts, but I'll usually throw in a pair of just like super lightweight waterproof pants. Because you never know, like when I ran Fat Dog the first time, it snowed in August.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Yeah, anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
And then all that gear goes into a little backpack?
All that gear goes into your pack and you hump it along with you. Like,
Have they solved like the backpack sweat problem?
Oh,
like,
no.
Isn't that the worst?
Oh, my packs are disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, they're so bad. It's like in the fabric. I just leave it outside when I'm not wearing it. But running packs are pretty good. Like, I don't know if you've ever tried one, but they're pretty like cinched in. Like, you don't feel them the way you do a normal running like backpack. So
I know in the winter you still run. But also, what's your other winter activities? Ski touring?
Yeah, love ski touring. Honestly, I'm obsessed with that. Like, got into it a couple years ago. Like, I grew up skiing, but like Grouse Mountain, not anything crazy. And then when I started touring, actually it was hilarious. So I started toured 1 year, and then I was asked to shoot this like ski mountaineering festival in Tahoe. And I went down there with like, I really had no business being out there. And I'm out there with like Hilary Matheson and Jim Morrison, like the North Face's top skiers. And we get up this peak and it's super icy, and I forgot to lock my boots into ski mode.
Yeah.
And I go to make a turn and I just fall flat on my face. And I just remember lying there looking up at Jim Morrison, who's just giving me this look like, what is this girl doing on our ski tour with us right now? Yeah. Which was a very humiliating moment for me, Feet.
But last time that ever happened.
Last time, and you know what? COVID was great. I worked my ass off with ski mountaineering and just like tried to get better, took a ton of lessons, went cat skiing, just did all the things. So that will never happen to me again. But I do love it. I love touring, and I love like the uphill game. Like, honestly, I think it's as good as or better cardio than running, and like saves your knees. And the turns downhill are nice, but I think I'm one of the few people that actually likes the uphill better.
You can walk uphill forever.
I freaking love it. It's so nice.
Have you seen that thing where it's like a handheld rope tow?
No.
Yeah, I don't know that much about it. I think it's a BC invention, but you get to the top and you tie this string to a tree, and then you ski down, and
there's like a little pulley system, and you can
a motor winds you back up.
Oh my god!
I've never
but that
seen
defeats
it.
the purpose, man.
I know it does, and also I've never seen it in action. I feel like your arms would get tired,
and you get laughed off the mountain.
Anytime you're in snow deep enough, that's going to be fun to ski. Are you really going to be able to pull yourself back up?
Could you imagine you're dragging like 4 feet of powder with you up the mountain? Totally. It's not going to work well.
I don't know. I don't want to. I don't want to come across as overly judgmental on the concept because I don't know that much about it.
I will.
I wasn't super intrigued when I saw it. I get it though. You got to try. People got to try every idea they have.
Earn your turns. I'm sorry, but I'm old school that way.
I'm old. I'm just old. So I love getting dropped off with a helicopter.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that.
What's going to happen next? I feel like, we're coming out of the pandemic. Travel's still a pain in the ass, but it seems like it's going to get better. Have you got plans for this spring, this summer?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually, funnily enough, this year is kind of my year of being an athlete again. It's like this full circle thing. Like, I'm really enjoying getting back into running for myself and getting really fit again. I had a great race in Thailand. I was second, and so I feel like that gave me this little spark to kind of push for it again. And so I'm doing a 50K in a few weeks down in the States, and then running the Rim to Rim to Rim Trail in the Grand Canyon with a bunch of friends, which is like 80K or so. And then I've got a 50 miler after that. And then I'm running a 100 miler in July in Colorado. So, and that'll be at altitude, which most of it's over 10,000 feet, going up to like 12, 13,000 feet.
Pretty savage.
So great for someone from Vancouver who lives at sea level. Why not?
Yeah. Or even sea level Squamish, right?
Yeah, no, it's seriously. So I'm actually super excited though. I was out there last summer. That was like my first foray into travel after COVID, and just like really loving the community of ultra running right now. People go out there and camp for weeks in the mountains, and so it's kind of fun to be going out there and like doing it for myself. It feels a little bit like a gift, I've spent a lot of years photographing other people doing the sport now, and so this year is my little like gift to me.
And is there in these endurance sports, is there a longevity? Is there a window where you're too old to do them, or?
I think it's interesting. Like, I think competitively, yes. Like, I'd say for women, what's exciting is that it seems to be kind of like late 30s, early 40s when you really hit your peak as a female
same
athlete.
as your sexual peak, I read.
Yes, absolally.
And for men,
women
18?
just get better and better.
And for the men, they're washed when they're 23?
15 seconds later, yeah.
Well, that's good. So you have a few more years in you then.
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of excited about my own career as an athlete, especially being in the sport for a while now. I think I'm smarter. Like, I'm not training harder than I used to. In fact, I'm training less, but I'm way smarter about it. I'm more efficient. I don't have a coach anymore, so I just go by feel. And so I really like where I'm at with my own balance with it. And we'll see how competitive I can be. Like, there's also more and more like college athletes that are getting into trail running, and they're frigging fast.
Right.
So I don't know if, like, it's not the same as it was when I first got into it. And even in racing over in Thailand, you can feel that difference. You're like, okay, the field's gotten a bit more competitive, but that's also exciting. And, I think I don't really care about that as much as I do just like being out there and doing the best I can. And it's all part of it. But yeah, as far as like, just to talk about the longevity piece again for a minute, it's an interesting sport because I think you do get better at it in general as you get older because of the mental side of it.
Right.
And I've had my ass kicked by some 60-year-olds, late in a race, some guy will pass me just trucking wearing a plaid shirt and he's just got his pulls out and he's moving. And I think it's kind of cool. Like, it's one of those sports where you're not like a hockey player and you're, 30 and over the hill. And so I think you're going to see more and more people just continue doing it because it's almost like a supported, like, fast packing, or like you could hike a lot of it. So I don't know. I think as long as you're good to your knees, you don't burn yourself out, like you can do it for a long time.
Is there starting to be a pretty international field of competitors? Obviously in Thailand, you have a more international field than in Squamish, but are we seeing people come to BC for these races from all over the world?
I mean, yes, I think Fat Dog, I think Squamish are huge draws, and Gary's done a really good job of building up the community here in Squamish. And so, like, they're internationally recognized, and, it's exciting to see people coming and exploring BC. There's also one in Whistler, the Whistler Alpine Meadows, that he's been working on for a while. And I feel like that one's just going to be world class when it all comes together. And so we have the terrain for it. Like, where we live is amazing. And so it's kind of nice to see the Americans start to take note, because I feel like they're very like, oh, we have all our races here. But there's definitely some more buzz. And there's some really strong Canadian runners. Like, I know a lot of my friends, there's some really kick-ass women that are kind of crushing these races, and people are taking note of like, oh, these runners are coming out of Canada. Like, that's interesting. And honestly, like, I've run trails all over the world, and I've never run trails as technical as like the North Shore Mountains.
Right.
And so I think if you can run here, you can run anywhere really well.
Is there a governing body? Like, the Federation International of Ski has ruined a lot of different snow sports. Is there
No.
the danger of that happening in running, or is it still pretty localized?
Pretty localized. There's some bigger companies getting into it, like UTMB, which is the big race series in Europe, was just bought by Ironman, and so they're kind of expanding within the trail running world. There's bigger players that are now sponsoring races, but I think in general it's still pretty grassroots. And like, I kind of seek out the races that are more mom and pop and that have that feel. And like, a lot of it's just run by local trail running associations, and we partner a lot with the mountain bikers too. So I think there's a nice synergy there, and hopefully it stays like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess it helps that it's a timed event. There's no judges, right? So that
it's not
removes a lot of
subjective.
potential for problems.
Totally. It just is what it is. Like, when did you cross the finish line? Okay, good job. And like, I know in some of the bigger races, they do the drug testing and stuff like that. But again, there's no money in the sport. So what are you doing it for?
Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of awesome things. Is there anything you wanted to get off your chest here before we call it a day? Or is there anything that you feel like we missed?
Yeah, what are you going to do your first ultra?
Well, I was running during the atmospheric river, and I enjoyed
Waiting.
that. I enjoyed that more than I thought. Yeah, wet feet doesn't matter if you're having a good time.
Kind of fun. Once you're wet, you're wet. You can't get any wetter.
I feel like, depending on how my treadmill heart exam comes next month, I've always had my eye on the Whistler Half Marathon just as a cool event and something to, a very easy way to get into the sort of organized running. So
earn your beer, man. Like,
I know that's
tastes
coming up.
really good.
I know that's coming up, and we'll see. That could be on my radar. I was gonna do it. I was gonna do a half marathon, but I broke my ankle skateboarding, and it was kind of that was my excuse.
Yeah, well.
But I honestly, I don't see any 50 kilometers in my future.
You know, they're a little bit crazy. And I do have to say, if you just want to run for fun and for the excuse to drink more beer, like 10Ks are great. Half marathons are great. You don't have to go insane. Yeah. There's a lot of shorter races too, like 15, 20 kilometers. But I think it's the community. Like you get involved with people. Like I go for a run instead of going for a coffee. And like, you know, you kind of kill two birds with one stone. So
my buddy, Eddie Vincent in the UK, he said, you know, it's for some people, it's a slippery slope. He goes, you start running a 10K to train for a marathon, and then he says you start running marathons to train for an ultra, and he's like, before you know it, you're literally running across the Arctic tundra in a race to the North Pole.
But how cool is that, right? Like those experiences are amazing. So I'm like, if ultra running lets you cover more ground and see more things than you would if you were like hiking it, or if you just never went at all, like how amazing is that? So in the world of addictions, not so bad.
Totally. Last words for the young kids out there that, you know, might be stuck in the metaverse and are looking for, you know, the motivation to do something else. What do you think the kids should know?
I mean, there's some pretty cool kids doing some crazy things. I know some kids that are, you know, summiting all these like, you know, highest peak on every continent, all that stuff. Like there's a lot to be said for just getting out there physically and doing something. And I don't know, go be the youngest person at something. It'll get you more likes on TikTok.
There we go. Hilary, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Feet.
Well, all right, there we go. Mini eggs, tea, and ultra marathons with Hilary Matheson. What a great conversation. Who out there is going to go buy a new pair of running shoes after listening to that? Hey, if you do it, hit us up on the social channels. Let us know what's happening for you. Hit up the Mountain Life website, mountainlifemedia.ca. There's a store on there. You can get all kinds of cool swag. Get ready for summer. Look your best. And thanks for tuning in. Thank you to Hilary for her time. Thanks to you for your time. This is all for you, and we appreciate you giving us your attention and your patience. And thank you to Shirai Rules, laying down the voiceovers off the top, to Adrian Gendro, who's provided us with the guitar licks. And of course, as always, this pod is recorded on the unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. We are proud to support and respect the nation, their history, their culture, and their stories. We're going to have some good stories coming out this year in the magazine. I'm working on a piece about Chief Jimmy, the coolest cat to ever float the Squamish River. So stay tuned. See you next month. And don't forget to live it up.